This is Stonkington. I wanted to get back to making a video here to recap some ways that I used Blackbox recently to make some money during this past week. Nothing I put in this video is meant to be a buy or sell recommendation. This is just to show, if you trade with us in the Blackbox Discord, how you could use some of the setups that I'm putting out there to help you make some money. So going into Monday of this past week, Hell's Bells asked us, if it was your first day trading and you just showed up to the stock market with some money, what would you do? And I really liked this question. It's something I think about all the time because when trading, if you think you know exactly what's going to happen, that's the exact moment the market will humble you and make you wrong. So it's something I think about often. And I wanted to highlight Microsoft because that was another one, if I think brand new to the market and if someone told me, hey, have you ever heard of the company Microsoft? It used to be over $300 a share and now it's 220. It's just simple enough thinking of it that way. But would be kind of what I saw set up on Microsoft going into this past week and how I would use Blackbox. My strength or edge as a trader is always going to be pattern recognition. So if you trade with us on the Blackbox Discord, I have this printed for myself, but this is pinned in the main room by me. So these are the things that I'm looking for that have kind of consistently helped me to make money. So using Blackbox on Friday, the previous Friday, after the market closed, I saw decent size on Microsoft come in at 221.39, and after spending more time watching Microsoft, combining it with using Blackbox, it's a great ticker in terms of the fact that it gets flow, it gets dark pool, the way that it moves, it can get really nice momentum, but also the contract prices have a good spread, relatively liquid. And, if you're wrong, it's not going to just completely destroy you and that you can get out without taking a hit on the spread or contract prices that are just moving insanely fast. So that's another, that could be a blessing and a curse on Microsoft because for me, I'm a short-term trader. I'm a scalper. So if it starts to run flat a little bit and I have to step away to do work or whatever else, it could be a tough one. But other than that, I really like trading Microsoft. So if we go over to the setup on Microsoft, this is queued up for Monday. So again, I had seen this dark pool come in. I went and added this 221.39 line, and I see this setup. So, a series of lower highs and lower lows kind of moving along these trend lines, which to me, I'm thinking, okay, that looks like this falling wedge type setup right here. And then I add in this dark pool that we saw on the Blackbox system. And so if we queue this one up and get Microsoft going here, this is the one that I posted here in the room, just kind of match what I was showing there, as Hells is asking us, what would you do if it was your first day in the market? So if we let this one play out, this was a good example of something I learned from Swan, at one of the other really solid traders at Blackbox, is watching for a specific line to break and then waiting for the retest of that line. So in this was a perfect example of it with this dark pool line here on Microsoft. It came down, and so this retest entry that Swan teaches would have been perfect for a long play on call options. And so that kind of matched up with the longer term falling wedge. It popped that, and then so continuing, I like to watch the 3-minute chart, just a little bit less hectic. I've been just kind of gotten used to it. And then as we see this one kind of play out, we see Microsoft starting to put in this head and shoulders type setup. So we could have, used this dark pool for a setup to the upside on Microsoft. And then, we see this one come in here where it puts in this head and shoulders type deal and breaks and provided an opportunity to scalp to the downside. Kind of funky drawing here. So this was one just from Monday on Microsoft that worked out well in terms of putting this one out here in the room, and highlighting how I like to use the dark pools that come in through Blackbox for a nice setup. And then we're always reading options flow live in the Roadhouse, and there was another interesting one on Microsoft that came in later in this past week. Okay, so this next setup on Microsoft, this one caught my attention specifically due to the options flow. So reading the flow, we're calling it out live in the Roadhouse every day, and this one from Wednesday caught my eye because we had this alert come through: rapid fire bullish Microsoft December 16th 250 calls. So if we drill down and find this flow, we're looking for, let's see, December 16th, here they are. So these came in, that's the 230 call. Let's find these 250s. There they are. So if we kind of look at this going through 7-star Mike's checklist, we're looking for the same strike and expiration, repeat taps, sweeps and blocks. Not a ton of money here, but they were hitting it repeatedly. One thing that is notable is that the contract price was going down. But if we go back here, it did have the rapid fire bullish alert, so it's going to get me to, take a look at the chart and see what Microsoft is doing as they're buying these calls. So I put this one out in the room when the alert hit, and I have this one marked up, and I'll go through some of these indicators that are listed here. I see this, and to me, if I'm going back here, these patterns, this is looking like a bearish setup on Microsoft. This looks like a rising wedge here, slightly lower highs, higher lows, and just moving along these trend lines. Also using Blackbox, I have highlighted this 228.19 line where there was decent dark pool size, or at least close in this area. So I'm watching it, continuing to reject this line as they're buying these December 16th 250 calls. So there's no, as a scalper watching a 3-minute chart, there's no way I'm taking this long if I'm watching a 3-minute chart. So if we jump over, I have this one queued up to this area of the day. Just kind of want to break down again how I set up the chart. So if you see one of these posts in the room, you can get value out of it. So these dotted white lines are the ones I'm drawing here to kind of highlight the pattern that I'm seeing. And then we can go in and kind of break down some of these indicators that you'll see when I'm posting charts. VWAP, I always have that one on there just as an idea for support and resistance. Orb, I like to set that to the 15-minute orb, and it was interesting here that that lined up right with this dark pool, highlighting the value of using Blackbox. And then this EMA indicator. And here with this EMA indicator, this one's going to be a shout out to one of the traders in Blackbox, Aggie Man. So I mentioned I like to use a 1-minute chart, I trade on a 3-minute chart, but I've realized from backtesting that I liked the speed of the moves from the EMAs on a 1-minute chart. So Aggie Man taught me how I can use this EMA ribbon indicator where I'm still watching a 3-minute chart, but the reactions are from the 1-minute. So from backtesting, I'm watching for the 9 EMA is going to be this green one here. Red's 34 and gold is the 89. And so I'm watching for when the 9 EMA crosses the 34, and then when the 9 EMA crosses VWAP. So huge help from Aggie Man there, teaching me that I could set these to the 1-minute, even though I'm watching a 3-minute chart, because I just noticed that the cross-ups happen faster. So if we let this one play out, it rejects right off this dark pool line, and then we get the EMA cross, the 9 goes down through the 34 and VWAP, for a nice put scalp on Microsoft to the downside. So basically going against all the flow that we saw come in. And even as we start to see a reversal here. Just watching it use this 9 EMA, this could be just here to here on a put scalp was a nice trade on Microsoft. And the fact that it comes right back up and rechecks this dark pool line, just highlighting the value of using Blackbox. And then we can see, just the 9 EMA not being able to kind of hold above VWAP there. Just the value of kind of using those EMAs. So that was the setup on Microsoft. And, hindsight 2020, with the CPI data and the moves on the market, these guys did end up over 300% on these contracts. But for me, just as a scalper, this would be an example of just, for a really short-term trade, it worked out much better going against the flow in this instance. So that was some of the setups I saw here in this past week for Microsoft. The next one that I would want to take a look at was on COIN from this past week. So COIN, the reason that COIN caught my eye reading the flow live this past week started on Monday, November 7th. So I mentioned earlier in the video, I focus on technical chart pattern setups. And then I'm also reading the flow. There was news and crypto, all kinds of crazy news this past week, which definitely impacted the price action on COIN. But, specifically for me, I'm watching flow and then watching the chart itself. So if we're going back to Monday on COIN, we can see the ones that started to stand out were this was Monday morning. They're just repeatedly hitting these 50 puts with contract price moving up. And then there was a bunch of other different bear lines. They're buying 30 puts out to January. And this is all just from Monday, November 7th flow. So as I see, right at the beginning of the day, they just start coming aggressively into puts. That had me pulling up the COIN chart. So here's where I dropped this one in the room as we're reading this flow. And so I drew this, white line, jump back over. And this one I called, looking to me like an ascending triangle. And so the difference between that and a rising wedge would just be that it has this kind of flat top look to it. And you can see that this would be a setup potentially either long or short. You could buy puts or calls on a setup like this one that I posted on Monday. And you can see I mentioned in the Roadhouse, I've been looking for the break of this 64.43 if we're going to take COIN long. And then I used VWAP, the purple wavy line there, as the trigger for puts. So got this one queued up right here. If we just kind of, say if you're listening or watching, listening to the Roadhouse and you're hearing me call this out, or, so you're just trying to like follow along, set up. This would be kind of how you set up the chart, get these indicators going. We'll get the EMAs on there as well. And then we can get orb. So we see orb up there, and then could even have used orb break to the downside as well. So if we just kind of start to let this one play out, we get it breaks right through VWAP, and then we get the EMA crisscross right the green down through the VWAP and the 34. So at this point, looking for put scalp, just matching with the flow in this example. And just a really nice push down on COIN. And then around here, we start to get another setup that I put out in the Roadhouse. We start to see this one build into a bear pennant and then break down again. So this was all just from Monday on COIN. Really nice setup. And we can pause this one here, jump back to the other setup we saw on COIN. Let's see. Want to make sure. Here we go. So there's me putting in the other bearish setup on COIN that we saw over here. So just if you're seeing, these are the setups that I'm putting out on the Blackbox Discord. Just want to kind of highlight these as ways that if you're following along there in the room, how you could have used these posts to kind of scalp along as we see these setups play out. All right, so now that we got a chance to look at some recaps on trade setups from this past week, I wanted to jump into some things I'll be watching moving into this next week. None of this is meant to be a buy or sell recommendation. This is just kind of things that I'll be watching for. And I wanted to start with Tesla. So mentioned earlier, I'm not one that's trading off news, but Tesla's had some crazy moves due to some kind of headlines. Elon selling Tesla to buy Twitter, all this craziness with Twitter. But you know, I'm kind of like listening to Hells and other guys in the Roadhouse giving their thoughts and commentary on that, but I'm trading more from just the technical side. And I mentioned also in some of the previous videos that I do like to use fibs. So for, you know, fibs are just kind of support resistance lines that algorithms may be watching. And you can use the fibs on all time frames. So you could, you know, maybe even start up here if you were, you know, drawing fibs on the daily and try and capture like this entire range. And so I'm just kind of looking for areas where we see a lot of wicks lining up. So if you're drawing fibs on the daily, like this could look pretty good. Something like this, you know, captures a bunch of these different areas. But for me, I'm scalping. So, you know, it can take days, weeks to kind of hit some of these lines. So personally, I'm zooming in a bit and using smaller time frames, and this way I can kind of get an idea if I'm scalping and I see Tesla coming up to some of these key areas, what I might be looking for. So for me, I'm switching down to a 4-hour, and this looks like a pretty important line. And then I'm kind of drawing something like to see where I start seeing these lines match up in repeat places. And it's looking pretty good around here. You know, really, it's like, it really only comes down to, you know, are you seeing bounces, reactions? Otherwise, you know, are the fibs really going to have any value for you? So I'm seeing something like this could work out pretty well. And then as I started zooming in on Tesla, we go to shorter time frames. One of the things that I'm starting to see build out here is looking like this inverse head and shoulders setup, because I'm always looking for these different patterns. You know, anything can happen, but you know, I'll be looking. We've got like this neckline kind of right up here, it looks like. So this is definitely going to be something I'm going to be watching. You know, obviously market conditions and all this other news surrounding Tesla. We've also seen some pretty bearish shots taken on Tesla until you know, the end of this past week, where things started to shift a little bit. But you know, just from a technical perspective, it's a pretty clear inverse head and shoulders setup on Tesla, getting ready for this next week. So that's something that I would be watching. I also know from historical tracking on Blackbox, there would be a dark pool line that we would want to add in somewhere. Came in at 191.3, so I'm going to add that in. And that I like to label these with the date and the dollar amount. So this one came in on November 8th. So for me, if, you know, as I'm like going through and setting up the watch list with this inverse head and shoulders set up on Tesla, I'd be potentially, you know, for this next week looking to take Tesla long if it can pop this inverse head and shoulders, and then potentially a short opportunity could be if it loses this dark pool from last week. So that's just kind of like one idea, you know, again, not a buy or sell recommendation, but, you know, kind of can see how these, you know, there's these wicks, and then this is just, you know, drawing fibs. Again, I've mentioned in previous videos, I'm like using fibs as almost like a time saver, where I can quickly find areas of support and resistance. You can see where all these wicks start coming in. So these are just a couple ideas on Tesla, and then we could even start getting some of these like trend lines going. You can see as it just follows along and just kind of keeps bouncing. It moves very technically off some of these lines. So just one idea on Tesla as a setup moving into this next week. Definitely will be watching for flow. Okay, so the other setup that I wanted to point out as we move into next week, I'll just finish on this one so we don't end up in never-ending video territory, would be the SPY. So pulling up the SPY daily, obviously everyone's watching the SPY. We had a huge move up off the CPI movement at the end of last week. And just a couple of things that I saw while kind of zooming out on the SPY daily would be the potential for this rising wedge to start building up. Obviously anything can happen, and again, not a buyer seller recommendation, but this is kind of fits pretty well into that wedge setup. So that's going to be something I'm going to be watching. And then I'll add some of these trend lines. Trend lines are, can be super subjective. I use the dotted lines as a reminder that, anything can happen. They can easily cross or, not necessarily need to reject. And then, I've been kind of watching vendors charting. Sometimes he'll put in these like rectangle, like shaded area type ideas, and it looks like, we could see something maybe a little bit like this. It looks like this could be some kind of an area just to kind of keep an eye on, and then be watching this. We could add in some kind of like support and resistance type lines in this area. But again, anything can happen. This is just kind of one idea I saw on the SPY daily that I'll be taking a look at as we move into the next week. And I'll also have my usual watch list out shortly later today. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to watch this. If you have questions on anything that you saw, please hit me up on either Twitter or the Blackbox Discord. And I'll look forward to trading with you guys this next week. Thanks.